Okay, this is the third attempt to record the audio for this video today. Hopefully it works this time. So we're going to be doing the setup of Git and GitHub on our command line. We're going to be basically connecting Git, which we installed in the last video, to GitHub. Okay? And so we're going to start with a public repository, which doesn't require authentication, just to make sure that Git is set up properly. And if you can't get past that, then you need to fix that before you go into the private repo, where we actually have to authenticate. And so we are going to use, and I want to explain this, so I'm going to pause the video for a second. There are two methods to authenticate to GitHub through SSH, okay? Through our SSH session where we've got Git running. There is HTTPS, which is how we're going to do it for this class, and then there is SSH using keys. We are not going to use the key method. I know how complicated that is. I know how challenging it is for some of you to get that set up. So don't worry about that. We're not going to do the connection over SSH. We're going to connect through HTTPS while you're on your SSH session to your server, okay? You need to be making sure that you're doing this on your Linux box that you created out on your cloud provider and not on your own computer. Although I encourage you to set up your own computer to be able to use Git, it's outside the scope of this class. I honestly cannot help all of you get your individual computers set up. So that's why you need to use Linux, okay? And I've noticed with some of the other homework, you're trying to set things up on your own computer as opposed to your Linux machine, okay? So make sure you're on your Linux machine before you try to do anything related to this lab or this activity. All right, so I need to, first of all, set up my credentials for Git so that they're cached, okay? And this is so I don't have to enter them every time I run a Git command. So first I'm gonna go out here to this, this document that I posted a link to, and you're gonna run this command to cache the credentials, okay? Now the default is 15 minutes. So if you want to cache your credentials for longer than 15 minutes, you go down to where it has the example with the timeout. And that timeout is for 1 hour, 60 minutes, okay? Your choice as to which one you want to use. I'm feeling a bit lazy with the video today, and so I just chose the 1 hour, so I'd have to keep re-entering my credentials, okay? Now, in order to do the clone of our Git repositories and be able to work with them, we have to be able to figure out what the URL is. And that's very easy to do. We just go out to our GitHub, okay, and we just go up to the browser. We can copy and paste the location to our URL or repository URL, okay? But it's very simple. It's just github.com/ whatever our username is / whatever the repository that you've created is, okay? So that might be John Smith, MIS 484 project, or it might be John Smith homework, whatever it is, that's the URL that you're going to copy, okay? And so our first example is going to be using our public repository that we created. And it's, in this case, I'm doing an example of a public repo. You don't have any public repos, and that's okay, right? But I'm using it to make sure that my Git is set up properly. And so I'm going to clone the textbook. And to test this, you could just clone my repo, by the way. So you can go out and clone my GitHub repo for the book, and now you'll have a local copy of it. And as long as you do a Git pull on it periodically, you'll be able to have a local copy of all the documents for the course, okay? So that you can easily reference them. All right, so let's just go ahead, and the first thing we have to do is we have to create a directory for all of our Git local content to go. And I just called mine my Git. It doesn't matter what you call it, I could care less, okay? So it's just that you need a directory on your local computer to store all of your Git repos, okay? Call mine my Git. I really recommend that you don't use any type of weird characters in it, okay? Don't put any spaces in it because that's going to just make your life hell trying to work with the command line. In general, don't use spaces for anything. okay? It's just a bad practice, bad habit to get into. There's so many other ways to name things. You don't have to use spaces, dashes, underscores, camel case, etc. Okay. All right, so right now the error message I'm getting, and actually let me stop and talk about error messages. So the error message that I was getting there is that there isn't a Git repository in the directory there. Okay? It doesn't know anything about Git, and that's because I have to first clone a repo or create a repo from the command line before I can see what's out there. Okay, so Git doesn't even know that that directory is for storing Git stuff. We're going to solve that in a second, but let me get back to the error messages. When you run a command and you get an error message, what I've noticed in previous homework assignments is I get questions and there's a screenshot. And the answer is actually right in front of you in the screenshot, okay? Read those error messages carefully. Most of the time, they're telling you exactly what's wrong and how to fix it. Whether it's, here's an error message, and you just Google or use Stack Overflow to go find that error message, or it gives you an error message and it tells you exactly what to fix. Okay, and so I've seen issues like when you're trying to install software, it says unable to install this particular software. Is HTTPS package present, right? And the issue is that that HTTPS package wasn't present, and it tells you the name of it. So then all you have to do is install that package and then go back and install what you were trying to install to begin with, and you're good to go, okay? So that type of self-help is going to do you a lot of benefit in the workplace, okay? I'm not always going to be there to answer the questions, okay? So think about that. Try to do some research ahead of time. You've got to start doing that on your own. You're getting to the project where, you know, the project's been released. You have the instructions for the project. And if you want to be able to pass the class, you have to be able to do that project independently. Okay, that means you're going to need to actually seek out and try to find answers to questions yourself. Okay? Along with that goes using common sense. Okay, and so if you're running into a problem and you're getting asked a question, just first of all, use common sense. Read what's being asked of you, and then make a decision. Okay? It's okay if the decision is wrong, because worst case scenario, you just rebuild your VM, or if you're doing something with Terraform, you just rerun Terraform or do a Terraform destroy and then recreate it. So there's not anything that's going to impact you significantly in this course, okay? Experimentation, critical thinking, problem solving, analytical reasoning, these are all critical skills that you need to develop, okay? All right, so now let's move on. In this case, we have cloned our repo, our public repo, into our Git directory. And you can see that the cloud management course directory is now there, and it has the content for the text, the materials for the course, basically. And so we can go in there and we can look at it. Now, we can also look at this from the website, which is what we've been doing up to this point, but this is the exact same content that's on that website. Now, you won't be able to make changes to the content, but you can view all the content that I create. Okay. When it comes time for you to pull down your repos, you will be able to make changes to the content, whether it's on your server or on your computer or on the website. So you can make these changes and they get, you have the ability to sync them everywhere, okay? So now when I want to clone my private project, I have to authenticate. It's a private project. I need to use my Git name or my GitHub username, okay? But for my password, I can't use my regular password that I use to log into GitHub. Okay, security feature. I have to use what's called a personal access token. Okay? And I create a personal access token by going up to settings on the upper right, okay? And then going to developer settings, and then on the left there, you'll see personal access tokens. I create that, I click that, and then I generate a personal access token. Okay. Now, I'm not going to show you mine on the screen. I will show you how I generate it, though. And once I generate it, I'm going to copy and paste that into my terminal window there so that it uses that as my password. Okay. And I named mine as CLI Access. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. I know I'm going to get a question about this. I get a lot of questions. So name it whatever you want. I could care less what you name it. It doesn't matter. Okay? It's not important. Name it something that you actually remember what it was used for. Okay. Now, the only access you need to give yourself is repo access, which encompasses the 5 areas there that you see. Okay. For the purposes of this class, you don't need to give it any of the other permissions. But you might, in the future, you might have a need as you learn. You might decide you want to do some of these other features. Okay. You can do all these other things through the web interface. It might be safer to do it that way. Okay. Go ahead and say generate token. You get a token. It's a long string. That's what you're going to use as your password for the command line. Okay. Incidentally, when you go, here's my recommendation. If you decide to go do the desktop option, and I'll show you this when we get to that point, I would create a new person access token for your desktop client, for the GitHub desktop client. Okay. If you decide to go down that path, that way, if you have a breach on your own machine, the worst case is you just have to change it on a particular system. Okay, you just have to change it in the desktop client and set a new token for that, not go set up your command line again, okay? And vice versa. All right, so now that we've done that, we can go in and, as you can see in the history of my shell there, we can go ahead and specify the GitHub URL so we don't have to keep setting it each time. Okay? Because if we don't specify it each time we run a command, it has to pull it from somewhere. And so that's why we set it so that it's set for us. Okay. All right, so we've logged in with our credentials and we've set up our keychain helper. Okay. Yeah, this video just reset itself. Okay, so that was where I did the token. All right, skip ahead. Okay, so now I'm going to go out to the web interface. I've already cloned my repository, enter my password, and now I have a folder for my repository. Okay, we see the README file. I can go out and look at that README file. Okay, and I can see it just says John Smith MIS 446 project. Okay, not a whole lot of content there. I can go out to the web browser, I can click the pencil icon, and I can edit this file and add some additional text. Now, the language that these text files use, that they end with the .md, that stands for Markdown, and that's a GitHub markup language. And so that's why all the classroom files that you see for my class are .md, because I create them out in GitHub, and I want them to be viewable through the web browser. Okay, I'm using the Markdown language to provide formatting on them. Now, when I make changes to files, I want to do a commit, and I want to have some sort of log of what I changed. This helps me remember later on when I'm trying to compare different versions. Okay, so in a real world scenario, you're going to put like your release notes here, okay, of what you changed in the file. Okay, just to help summarize and remind you, I created a new way of connecting to Oracle, okay, whatever that might be. Now, for this class, you're just going to commit directly to the main branch, but in advanced work, if you decide to, you probably want to look into how to do branches. Okay, but for this class, we're just going to commit to the main branch. We're not going to worry about creating other branches. And so now we've made a change, and it's been pushed out to our website. And we can click on the history, and we can go back and see the history of all of our files. We can do this from the command line as well. And so I recommend that you look up how to do that in the GitHub man page. Okay. Okay, so now if I look at the README file initially, it hasn't changed at all. But if I go ahead and pull the change, now I can see my changes in here. Okay. Get pull will pull content changes down from the server. Get push takes them from your local environment, wherever you're running get push from, and pushes the local changes up to the server. Okay. So if I get push here, it says everything's up to date. But what if I make a change to the file? Okay. I want to commit the change to that file. I've made a local change here. Before I can do that, I have to set up a few parameters. Now, you can go set up a Git configuration file in your home directory that allows you to configure Git to have the defaults for your username and your email address and the GitHub repository location, these sorts of things, okay? Or you can specify them on the command line. In this case, we haven't done either yet. So before I can commit a change, it needs to know who I am, okay? And so I need to commit things with an email address and a name. Now, you can use any email that you want. Don't use someone else's email. Don't make up an email, okay? This is going into your private repo, so it's private. But if you're concerned, just set up a throwaway email address. It doesn't matter, okay? But the worst thing you can do is use someone else's email or just make one up, because chances are it is someone's email. If they start getting your email, you're going to get blocked and you might get your GitHub account deleted, and that would really suck to lose all of your classroom work, okay? So just be aware of that. You want to set your username and your email here, okay? Note, I've also included the text versions of what I'm following along with to make this video. So those are linked from the instructions. Okay, so if you're having a problem seeing what I'm typing, you can go back through the documents and look at them. Now, by default, the editor is set to Nano. I don't like Nano. I don't like to use it. Okay, so GitHub, when you do a commit, it has to open a text editor to be able to write that message of what you're committing, okay, the change log. On the web browser, that's done for you. It's wrapped, okay, into a nice web browser interface. On the command line, it's not so much. So you have to make a message here. Now, I ran into some issues with Nano, but you would put your message in here and you'd save it. And this actually caused me some grief in a few minutes here as I went through this. But you have to make the change, save it, and then you can see here, I should have caught this message and I wasn't paying attention and I didn't, okay? And so I want to change my editor to VI because I'm just not comfortable using Nano. Okay. So the next thing I had to do is I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the exact syntax. It's been so long since I did it. But it's basically set space -o space editor name, like VI, VIM, Nano, whatever you want to use as your editor. Okay. I'm going to set mine to VI because I'm familiar with VI. Okay. And then this will mean that every time I do a commit now, it will open VI instead. Okay. If I want this to persist though, across me logging off my VM and logging back in, I need to set this up in my bash profile. And you can look up how to set up a bash profile. It would probably be good practice for you to do so. Okay. All right, so now if I go and open this README file and I add some text to it of some sort, okay. Okay, I did a get push again and there wasn't any change. What I needed to do was a git commit And in order to do that, I had to delete a file. So let me explain why I deleted the file. First of all, I tried to commit all my changes. That's what a -a is, commit all files that I've changed. And I get an error message, going back to the error messages, unable to create this file. Okay? File exists. The file's already there. I can't create it. It's a lock file. That's a problem for me. Okay? If there's a lock file, that means that the program that was creating the lock file didn't close correctly. It didn't clean up after itself. Okay? And it's telling you this as you scroll down. Another Git process is already running. Okay? An editor opened by git commit, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Then it says remove the file manually to continue. So what file do you remove? You look back up and it tells you what file. Unable to create this file. So you remove that particular file. Okay? As you can see in the terminal session, okay, I remove that file. Now when I do a git command -a, it tells me I changed one file, which was my README file. Now I can do a git push, and now it's pushing it up to the server. So now if I go back to my web browser, I will see that change that I just added locally. Okay? So rather than SCPing files back and forth, or even potentially editing them directly on the server, now you have the ability to edit them in whatever editor you choose on your computer if you set this all up on your computer as well. Now that's outside the scope of the class because not everybody has a computer. Okay? I will post basic instructions on installing Atom and GitHub Desktop on Mac. The websites that I will go to will show you how to do that on other platforms like Windows. Okay? But it'll be a fairly straightforward, just like any other application that you need to install on your computer, if you choose to do so. But it's not required. Everything you can do from your Linux machine in the cloud. Okay? All right, so now you can see that I made a change to the file. Okay? And so now it shows up in the version history. All right. So remember, git pull pulls from the server, git push pushes back up to the server. Okay. And if you need help, you can do man on git, or you can just go out to the web and search for git manual. Okay. Skip ahead in the video here. Now, same thing I did with the class, okay, with our materials. I'm using the editor, Atom editor, and then the GitHub desktop, okay? Same basic principle, except you have buttons to click on instead of having to. So you commit first, then you push it, okay? So instead of using the command line, you can also use the editor on your computer if you choose to set it up, okay? All right, and then if we go out here to my repo that I had downloaded before, if I do a git pull, we can see I changed homework 5. Okay. And that's it.